So Nima, I think. Hey everybody, it's Jay Myers here, CEO of NGen, and we're here with another project podcast. This is better than Joe Rogan, so stick in with us here. I'm joined today by Nima Zamani, who is co-founder and CTO of a company called Cobionix. So Nima, tell us a little bit about yourself and Cobionix and how this organization got off the ground.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic, Jayson. Again, thank you so much for kind of inviting us to the podcast. So the story kind of started, me and my other co-founder, his name is Tim Laswell. We've been kind of friends ever since undergrad, so we know each other for almost 15, 16 years now. And so we've been always wanting to create a company, right? I mean, we've had probably tens of ideas to kind of start, and every now and then, we had a new kind of idea that we wanted to kind of start a company on. But unfortunately, time never worked out, or there were different situations that kind of prevented us from starting a company. So what happened during COVID, both my other co-founder and I had this opportunity to kind of see how we can help the situation with COVID. So we were like, okay, what's the main problem people are having right now? And that was vaccination. So at the time, we were like, okay, how can we make this more streamlined? How can we make it easy? I mean, it obviously was a huge problem that doctors and nurses had to kind of leave what they were doing and then go and vaccinate people. So we had surgeons that had to stop surgery and vaccinating people. It was a complete mess, for the sake of a better word. But so what we kind of did was said, let's bring AI and robotics together, So let's use robots to kind of vaccinate people. So that was our kind of a first kind of a proof of concept. Initially, we got a lot of pushback on it, because people don't like the idea of robots and needles, and I mean, it's pretty scary. Imagine a robot coming at you with a needle. But we decided to go with a needleless solution. So there were no needles, so it was all pneumatically injected, and we had some clever designs for that, and that idea kind of took kind of a life of its own for a couple of months in the press. We were featured in BBC. In Bloomberg, Fast Company, other places, and so that was the start of the company. That's how we got our initial fund, to kind of try to bring the state-of-the-art robotics and artificial intelligence to the medical space. So obviously, COVID died down, so and the interest in vaccination went down with it, So we kind of shifted our focus from vaccination to ultrasound. So right now, the robot you see behind us is the robot that is, funny enough, partially funded by NGen. So we kind of made this robot from scratch, right? So the robot is a medical grade robot. It's got pretty much all the states of the art technology in it. We are using the best control systems, the best servos, the motion technology, the gearing, the sensors. There are about 10 cameras in the robot, so there's a lot of technology packed into that robot. If I'm not mistaken, we are kind of only the third company in the world that makes medical collaborative robots. The other two being KUKA and Kinovo, who are also based in Montreal. So they're also a Canadian company. And so it's a very small market. It's an untapped market. And I kind of feel like it's a necessary market, because as the population ages, as there's more need for medical staff, the only kind of way to solve it is to augment and enhance the medical staff right now with more technology. And part of that is going to be kind of robotics. So I'll stop right there, and
yeah, no, that's great, and a lot to kind of unpack there. too. So going from kind of an idea about how to work with one of your closest friends now to sort of one of the three leading medical robot companies in the world is not a slight. It's something to really really congratulate you guys about, but it's a real achievement here. And as you say, this is not. It's not just any robot company. It's a cobot company.
Yes.
Which I think is really important too. But what's the basic vision behind what you're doing? Because it can be used to, as you say, to deliver vaccinations or ultrasound here, but clearly a lot of other applications too. What's the kind of your overriding vision of the technology?
So I mean, there's no question, especially with the advancement in AI, there's gonna be this new explosion of robotic applications, right? I mean, what has classically held robotics back was the AI portion of it.
Right.
I mean, obviously, robots have existed for well over 30 years, in kind of different forms, but what has made them not very kind of useful in everyday tasks was the lack of AI. Because in everyday environments, if you're like whether the robot's like flipping burgers or whether it's doing ultrasound, anytime the robot is in everyday environment or dealing with humans, it's a chaotic environment, right? I mean, things are not ordered. You're not in a factory, So usually factories, everything is ordered, you know exactly where the part's going to be, you know exactly how to pick it up, you know exactly what the part is. But in everyday environments, things are very chaotic. And in order for robots to do anything useful, they have to kind of think on their feet, so they have to kind of be able to make judgments and decisions on the fly. And the way to do that is using AI and also kind of state-of-the-art computing. So there are multiple technologies I kind of feel like is converging down to kind of a single point. That's why there's going to be this robotic and AI revolution in the next 10 to 15 years, similar to how the internet got started. And one of them is the exponential increase in computation power very cheaply, right? So all the AI, for example, we are running on the robot behind me, it's being done on the edge, or it's being done
Right.
Right on the robot. So it doesn't have to be connected to the cloud. It can just think on its own. If anything happens, can react to it, and that is crucial, for any robot and cobot application that's gonna deal with the humans, that's gonna deal in a chaotic environment. The other thing is that the other technology that's converging is the decrease in the cost of actuation and sensors. So
Right.
some of these sensors existed before, but they would cost significantly more than it costs today. So like for example, one camera could be like 10 times the cost of a camera today, with the same level of technology and capability. So there's a huge decrease in the cost of the sensors and actuators. And the third would be the advancement in AI. And this is what's happening in the past 10 years or so. That's kind of making this all possible. So it's a convergence of multiple technologies.
And I think that's really important. I mean, you've got AI, computing, sensors. You do a lot in materials space too, and materials research around, and of course on the medical side. It's I've always said, look, people talk about machine learning, and they tend to think just about AI. I mean, today everybody's focused on AI, but you need to integrate that. Even machine learning, it's AI, but you need a machine. And
Yes.
so and it's how the total integrated solution is put together, and that's what you guys were trying to do in the project. So tell us a little bit about what you did with the project that we helped to support.
So the project we did with NGen, interestingly enough, had nothing to do with the medical space. So we are also working on kind of the non-medical applications too. So where can we apply the same technology that we are using for the medical side for non-medical applications?
Right.
And as you mentioned rightly, Jayson, one of the applications we are really interested in is in material science, and using robots to kind of enhance or increase the innovation in material science, right? So classically, material science has been kind of very expensive, and the reason for that is the labor involved. So it's a lot of testing, a lot of trial and error, a lot of people putting samples in a test tube and samples, in a test machine, and doing that for months or years to be able to kind of fine tune the material. So one of the things we did is that we kind of had this project with a company called Universal Matter, and they kind of manufacture they have a process that is highly efficient at manufacturing graphene. Okay, so graphene has classically been very expensive to produce, and there have been a couple of companies, but this company can do it very cheaply. And so what we try to do with this company is that to bring the robots to the company to not only help with the manufacturing of graphene, but also create a kind of a smart lab, if you will, so we can take samples from the, let's say, the production line, test them as they're being produced, or help with the R&D side. So that is where we see cobots kind of playing a huge role in the material science and the manufacturing. To be able to go around the factory, take samples, put them in the test machines, get the results back. And so we didn't only supply the robots, we also help them with the database as well. So there's a whole database in the background that kind of coordinates the samples and the results of the samples, to kind of track the quality of the production, or to help with the R&D side. And once we can create this kind of a streamlined system, then the amount of test data is going to increase substantially. The cost of obtaining test results are going to decrease. And then once you have the volume of the tests that you need, then you can use AI and machine learning again that looks at this database and tries to, okay, say, what, these are the input, these are the outputs, so we did XYZ to the material. These are the results on how the material, perform. So we can have an AI trained on it to be able to optimize for different products.
It's a really good example of there's still all sorts of economists mainly, but people doing analysis about the impact that AI and automation is having on the workforce. And most of those people conclude that the introduction of AI, robotics, automation processes are replacing jobs. But I think it's what you've been describing is a really good example of it, where it's just the opposite. It's the fact that you're trying to save labor because the job or the people may not be available for the jobs, but it's also, you're adding so much more value in this process, and especially around the data analytics here as well. You're adding a component or tasks that it's not just repetitive tasks, it's tasks that people could not do on their own, at least at the cost or in the timeline that they would have available. So I think it's an excellent example of how cobots especially can be used to improve value, improve productivity. But tell us a little bit about some of the challenges there of using cobot systems. Here, are there regulatory challenges? Are there health and safety challenges when you're dealing with robots, with equipment that are actually working alongside people?
So definitely there's a lot of regulation. So whether it's the industrial cobot or medical cobot, there are different standards we have to meet. So as we are speaking, actually, our robots being kind of tested in a place close to Markham, for its electrical and mechanical safety. So any robot that goes to the medical that has to get into a medical application has to pass what's called the IEC 60601. And that contains all the mechanical and electrical safety. So there's a huge range of tests you have to do to see the robot is safe. It stops at a safe distance. If anything goes wrong, it doesn't kill anyone. What if there's a short circuit in the system? Is it gonna explode? So there's a lot of different kind of tests that you have to do, obviously. And the other thing is the speed that the robot goes around humans. So classically, cobots go at a 250 millimeter per second speed around humans. Obviously, even the robot behind me can go a kind of a multiple of that number. It can probably be like 5-6 times faster. But when you're dealing with humans or in a kind of a human environment, you have to slow it down a lot. Yeah. So even if the robot hits you, it doesn't really do anything. So there's a lot of real regulation, and there's a lot of I would say good rules of thumb or suggestions, that you have to kind of keep in mind when you're kind of creating a product like that. And at the end of the day, let's say for the medical side, given all these requirements and regulatory, it's kind of the FDA's job, right, to kind of give the final stamp of approval, so to speak, to say, what, these are all the regulations, but based on everything, your robot is safe, then we approve it, and then there it goes. For the automation side, or for industrial or non-medical side, the bar is lower for obvious reasons. Medical is always a higher bar. So almost certainly, if you can make a robot that can meet the medical standards, it will pretty much meet any other standard. Right. Yeah. Right. And so there are definitely regulations, and I'm assuming there will be more regulations, especially on the AI side, that's going to come in down the pipe, because right now the AI is a little bit of like a wild west. No one really knows how to regulate it. Even on the medical side, they don't really know how to kind of control it, in a sense that a classic software, there's kind of version control, So you have, the software is version 1.002, it's very nicely defined. But with AI, how do you control that? What if you train it again? What if there's more data input being put into the training data? Is that a different AI, or do you have to repeat all the tests, which probably would be infeasible, because every time you update the AI, you have to start from scratch. It would, be somewhat impossible. So there's a lot of ambiguity in the AI sense on how the regulation is done, because there is AI is a kind of interesting interesting field. There's a structure of the AI, which is, let's say, is more nicely defined. Then the question becomes the training of the AI, right, or the data that goes into the AI. That one is the one that's not very nicely defined, and what kind of data are you putting it in? How is it being trained? How is it? So those type of things are a little bit more ambiguous. So that's where I say, the future is going to go on the regulation of the AI, and there's a lot of other ethical aspects to AI as well. For example, is the AI biased? Like towards different racial groups, or different gender, sex, or all that stuff. And that depends on the data you're giving it to train. So if for example you're only giving it a certain set of data to be trained, then it's going to be biased towards that kind of aspect. So there's a lot of both social, ethical, and also technical stuff, which I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of regulation. Right now, we are in the kind of a wild west, so we can do anything we want. But I kind of get a feeling that a couple of years from now, there's going to be a lot of strict regulation on that.
So Nima, how did there are lots of issues out there around AI, and you've spoken to a number of the key issues here. How do you see those affecting your application, though? Clearly the AI is continually learning, and that issue about you're not going to have one version, but a continuum of hopefully improved versions of this going forward. But wouldn't, at least on the industry application side, a lot of the, are there still some concerns around the bias of the data, or on the medical application side too, bias of the data that you would be using, or how would these issues play into your particular applications of AI?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that you can do to make sure that over time the bias is minimized. One way is to always continuously have a kind of a feedback loop, right? So it's not like you send an AI into the wild and you kind of wash your hands from it, and then okay, you know what? Let's see what happens. So you continuously have to get feedback. So let's say if an AI has some sort of a bias, then you realize that, okay, you know what? Let's say the AI had let's say the robot had to do some ultrasound on a person, but for some reason the AI had a bias and couldn't detect the face of the person or the body of the person. Then you have to focus on that side and try to kind of do retraining of the AI and kind of eliminate the bias. So it's gonna be a kind of like a game of whack-a-mole, So you gotta, as they pop
Right.
up, you gotta try to diminish the bias. But it's gonna be very hard to create a first AI that doesn't have any problem.
Yeah.
Just like a human being. It's gonna be very hard to get a person who's 40 years old, and who kind of hasn't made any mistakes. So it's part of it's kind of part of learning process, I guess. But you need to have that continuous feedback loop.
Right.
So that's why it is a continuum, and that's why you can't just send AI into the wild and then wash your hands from it. I mean, and we can see this in every day right now too. For example, with what's happening with Google now, or what's happening, with other companies with their large language models or the diffusion models, and those are huge companies, and they still have to deal with this problem. Because because someone's gonna find a way to make your AI break, to say something that it shouldn't,
Yeah.
or to draw a painting that it shouldn't, and then all of a sudden you're in trouble. Those are the stuff that will get better over time. And one of the other things is the data side. So there's going to be a lot of more refined data. So AI is only as good as the data you give it. So one of the things, for example, we find out, whether it's the material science side or the ultrasound side, first of all, there's tremendous lack of data. Like we can't find good ultrasound data, or good, because all the data, for example, maybe it's not labeled, it's scattered, so it's not, we don't have one national bank of ultrasound data. Every clinic has its own hard drive, basically, of ultrasound data, and it's not labeled, and it's a big mess. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. There are people who are trying to solve that problem. So one of the ways we can make AI better is by not really focusing on the AI side, but focusing on the data side. Because again, AI is only as good as what you're putting into it. So
Right.
if you have a large language models that is, and that was one of the cases initially with these large language models that were trained on Twitter. Well, there's a lot of crazy stuff that people say on Twitter.
Yeah.
And if you get your AI trained on those crazy stuff, then it says crazy stuff. you know so that's where I think the focus of the future is going to be. Yeah.
No, that's good. Well, listen, we've talked a lot about AI and the technology, but one thing I wanted to ask you too, because you're doing some really neat things with indigenous communities. Maybe speak a little bit, and this isn't, of course, around materials discovery, but some of the applications of your medical cobot. What are you doing out in Saskatchewan?
Oh yeah. So currently we are in collaboration with Saskatchewan and both University of Saskatchewan and Saskatchewan Institute of Technology. We have our kind of a lead clinician, to do the clinical study. His name is Dr. Ivar Mendez, and he's a Order of Canada recipient who is working in robotics and telerobotics. He's a very smart person, very interested in the field. He's very keen on helping people, and so we ended up having this kind of opportunity to work with them on the in Saskatchewan, especially in the kind of the native communities in Saskatchewan, which are a little bit remote. Most of the times they don't have access to the best healthcare, so to speak. And what we want to do is that first of all, we want to as AI and robotics advance, we want to bring as many groups and communities with us through this advancement,
Right.
because we don't want them to be left behind. So one of the things that happen, unfortunately, with technology is that the rate of growth for technology is so fast that a lot of groups fall behind, right? Because we've seen this multiple times in history, ever since Industrial Revolution, or so there have been multiple times in history where things have exploded, but it only benefited very few, and it's left many people behind. Even though Industrial Revolution in France happened, still 300 years later in Africa, people didn't benefit from that, industrial revolution, so to speak. So we just want to make sure it doesn't happen with robotics and AI. Part of it is because we kind of feel like the explosion or the advancement in AI and robotics is going to be a lot more impactful than even the industrial revolution. I think it's going to change societies, fundamentally, and we want to make sure everybody benefits from it. So the goal with the native communities in Saskatchewan is to bring this technology to their community, to make sure they get access to the state-of-the-art healthcare, and to also train people in those communities to deal with AI and robotics. I think that's also very important. To just kind of disseminate the knowledge, into those communities. And yeah, so ultimately the goal of hopefully all of us on this planet is to make the world a little bit better, and leave it better than we got it, and hopefully this project with Saskatchewan is going to do that. Yeah.
No, it's we came across it, I think, through some discussions with our Saskatchewan Indigenous manufacturing contracting cluster that we work with, but then also through some of the school programs there, and everybody was talking about this company Cobionix that out working with Indigenous communities, and it was great for us to be able to say, yeah, we know them, and we've worked with them as well. So Nima, just a couple of other questions here for you. What first of all, this is a company that's gone from startup through some pretty challenging times with COVID, and then also now sort of going into some really leading edge applications here. I know it hasn't been an easy process for you as co-founder and your partners too, but tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you're facing, and of course the big question I think everybody has is, are you able to find the people here to work with you?
So that's a interesting question. First of all, it was pretty challenging. Even right now we kind of work. Everybody in the company works about 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours a day. I mean, it's very hard to get to meet the deadlines. To get the technology out the door. So it is very challenging. We are kind of fortunate that we are in the kind of the University of Waterloo network. So it's easier to find talent. From the University of Waterloo, or even from University of Toronto. Both of these universities are very good at robotics and AI. So we are lucky in that side, but on some of the other stuff that's not purely engineering, it is more challenging to find talent. And we are somewhat at a peak employment, so it's very hard to get good experienced people, who are kind of willing to work for a startup, and who also are located in this area.
Right.
Okay, so there are multiple criteria that have to be met, and that's hard. to find the people who are already here for experience, who are willing to let go of their, let's say if they're working for Apple or Google or someone, to let go of their Google job and come work for a startup. That's very hard. So there seems to be kind of a kind of a limit on who we can get or how we can get them. So what we found, it's easier to just get maybe more junior people and train them up to be, kind of to that level. That's, it's kind of out of necessity, but it seems to be the strategy moving forward. To get junior people and train them up to be like expert at AI or expert at robotics, which so you kind of have to not only build a business as a startup, you also have to build the train the people too. You got to do both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How many employees do you have now?
So right now we're about 10 people, full time. We have some researchers and part-time people. So altogether we're about 15. So we have like 3 researchers in UFT, PhD students working on some kind of AI models. We have some part-time people helping with manufacturing. We have co-ops, but altogether we are 15 people, but 10 people full time.
And I know you have big growth plans. So what do you see as next in terms of applications for your current technology, but also next stage of growth for Cobionix?
Yeah, so we are currently in the kind of middle of doing our next fundraising. So either it's going to be a bridge round or a Series A round, depending on how the economy goes. Again, this past 3 years only hasn't been hard on the COVID side or the physical aspect. It's also been very hard on the financial side too.
Yeah.
Because the markets are very unstable. One day, there is COVID and everything goes down. The other day, it comes back up. It's very volatile, and it's making kind of decision making very hard. Because someday they say there's going to be a recession, then they say there's not going to be a recession, then and everybody, as soon as they hear the word recession, nobody wants to give money. Then when they hear there's no recession, everybody wants to give money. So it's somewhat bipolar environment we're kind of living in. But the goal for us, first of all, is to raise the next round, which is gonna help us expand the manufacturing and growth. So we want to have manufacturing here in Ontario, build the robots, assemble the robots, test the robots. I think it's very important to have the manufacturing in Canada. And there's no excuse, to go to China or other places, especially if you're a robotics company. The whole point of robots is a labor solution, so if you're going to China or other countries for labor, then why are you building a robot to begin with? So so the whole reason you build a robot is to bring the manufacturing back in Canada, or North America, so to speak. And the other kind of our aspiration or goal is to put the Cobi, which we call the robot, in many places as possible. We want to put Cobi in as many places as possible, whether it's medical or non-medical side. Obviously the non-medical application, we can generate revenue much faster, because the medical side has a much longer path to revenue, right? Because you got to do the clinical studies, you got to do the FDA submission, you got to do, so there usually takes like 3 to 5 years, but the non-medical side or medical adjacent side, maybe if you're doing some sort of a massage robot, or if you're doing muscle rehabilitation or assisted feeding, even on the medical adjacent side, those will have a much shorter path to revenue. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about a massage robot going 250 millimeters a second, but would be finished in about 10 minutes.
Well, that's a max speed. It doesn't have to go.
Okay.
Yeah. It can go very slow. It can be very gentle. Yeah.
No, but listen, you've made great strides, and with a couple of applications on the medical side, and clearly one on the industrial side too. So I think I think being able to demonstrate the application is probably putting you in a really good position for additional funding and financing there, regardless of what round you go to.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much. And NGen has been a great partner through that process. We probably maybe might not have been here if it wasn't for that funding from NGen, because again, part of the robot was subsidized by NGen, and we are very grateful. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can continue this kind of collaboration with, again, hopefully many more projects down the line.
Yeah, no, that's great, and we're really pleased to have supported you and look forward to sticking with you here. I think it's one thing for us to be able to fund projects like yours, but we're also really interested in making sure that that they're commercially successful too. So look forward to working with you, Nima.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jayson, and a pleasure. And hope everybody on the podcast enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I hope we've met the standards that Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure we have.
One day.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Nima.
Have a great day.